All right. Hey, I think we're ready to go. Jeff, good to see you.
Awesome. You too. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Great to finally sort of talk with you in real life. I know we've gone back and forth a little bit on Twitter. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I was saying that to Pablo before we got started. Super excited to get to talk about Rive. It's something I've been diving into pretty deep, and yeah, I think I always have these questions like, well, why aren't more people using this? And I think it's because it's a little bit tricky to get started on, but yeah, I'm hoping I can help kind of demystify it for some people and kind of display some of the possibilities integrating with Webflow. So yeah, whenever I get to talk about Rive, it's a good day. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, yeah, and I'm also just curious to learn more about you. So, like, what's your background?
Yeah, I think I would say I'm a designer who's pretending to be a developer, but I've been a graphic designer for a long time, probably 20 years or so at this point. And just kind of, started with a love of visual communications and kind of branched out from there. So I have a full-time job doing marketing for a nonprofit organization, do Webflow development on the side, graphic design on the side, and now Rive animation on the side as well. So yeah, I really love anything that's related to visual communications. And yeah, I'd say that's that's the best way to describe it.
Well, awesome. 20 years, that's quite a while. What'd you come up, like, how did you come up? What were you working on? How'd you get into doing, building for the web?
Yeah, I started with, like in high school, I took like Photoshop classes, and I think that was kind of what got it started for me. And I remember like building sites in GeoCities, things like that. And working in Flash at that point too. And actually, I cleaned out an old computer recently, and I found a Flash website that a friend and I had built together, and just realized, yeah, I haven't been able to build anything quite that creative until more recently with Rive. But yeah, I loved Flash animation, and then yeah, I went to undergrad for visual communications and graphic design, and have been working mostly in nonprofits for my career. Really wanting to do something that makes a positive difference, and put my time and talents to good use. But always looking for new ways to communicate and make it more interesting, and especially make a visitor say like, how did they do that? And create those kind of like delightful moments that people don't expect, but really enjoy and kind of stick with you. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I also came up doing Flash design and development, and like, I'd be out and people would ask me what I did, and I would be like, I'm like sort of like the Leiniger, sort of like a designer developer type of thing, and like, well, and it was always sort of like this middle ground where I didn't quite feel like I was a good enough designer and I didn't feel like I was a good enough developer. But I could do, like, I could help to bring those two worlds together. And at that point, there really wasn't, kind of like a role for that or even like an appreciation for it.
Yeah. Yes, that's very relatable. I say I'm a graphic designer, but I don't do all that much design all the time. It's really like a shorthand for like doing creative stuff. But yeah, it's a little all over the place. So yeah,
kind of. Yeah, my shorthand is more just like, I like to build things. I'm a builder.
Nice.
And I think within your work, that was one of the things that was really interesting, was that there was kind of, there is kind of like this throwback to, being able to have this combination of timeline animation, as well as I'd imagine some things that are like lightly programmatic, XY movement following the mouse, and things along those lines.
Yeah, exactly. I think it does remind me of working in Flash, but it is kind of taken to the next level of being able to run, especially on the website. We get into like what Rive is and how it works. There's a JavaScript runtime where you can kind of code in any kind of JavaScript functionality that you know how to do, which can really create some powerful and unexpected kind of experiences. So I feel like I'm only scratching the surface with what I've been able to figure out, because I'm not a JavaScript coder. I've been kind of learning it along the way enough to make some things function, but just knowing what is possible is super exciting.
Did you ever work in ActionScript?
A little bit, yeah. I don't remember it anymore, but
yeah, I spent like 10 years just banging my head on the keyboard, just going back and forth between ActionScript and timeline animations and kind of like those primitive controls. I think it's interesting to start to see some things kind of make sort of full turn here.
Yeah, definitely.
How is go for it.
I was just going to say, I realize like a lot of what I'm doing right now is very character driven, because I love being able to introduce a character who can kind of guide you through a website or experience or something like that. It makes it easy to relate to. And then when I remember what I did back in high school and early in college, that's what it was too. So it's like finding a way to bring that back and do it in a really performant and a way that works across devices and things is really exciting, because that was part of the problem with with Flash, is that if you didn't have the right plugin, your website just like wouldn't load at all, or it would take forever to load and people would leave before it was there. So it's exciting to have a tool that can do that these days now too.
Yeah, and I think looking at ways to just have like a more expressive web. And I love standardization, and I love being able to have kind of like streamlined experiences, but then there's times where you do want to maybe have something that's like a little bit different, something that's going to break out of just the layer cake of like value proposition, logo wall, left, right, left, that type of thing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I'm always trying to find the balance too of like how much animation is too much animation, and how much is just enough, how can we make it kind of unexpected and different, but not so overwhelming or especially like distracting from the purpose of a website or an experience. So
that was, the thing about Flash is like there was some really great stuff, especially how it could bring design and development teams together. And that's actually why I started working in Webflow, is because I missed that. But then there was also what I call the Mariah Carey syndrome, which is just because you can hit every note doesn't mean you should. And so there was times where it's just like a little bit too much.
Yes.
Also, I just want to give a quick shout out to Raymar, seeing the chat over there. We're going to be talking a little bit later today. And anyone has questions, just go ahead and like throw them in. I'm excited to get into this. So, maybe Jeff, what you can do is just start talking broadly around some of your projects, and then we can, get in and you can give a little bit more of a deep dive into.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think what I might start with is talking about the Riveflow site that I've been putting together, because that's geared towards people who are getting started with Rive, but may already be familiar with Webflow,
Yeah.
and bringing those two things together. So yeah, that's the site there. And this has some examples of what can be done. Again, this whole site is very character driven. This character is named Rumple, and I have Waldo to thank for the name on that one. But
Nice.
this is I wanted to start off with like a great little kind of a simple example of what's possible just right here on the site. And so you can see he's got this like bouncing little looping animation, and then as you get closer, he's gonna look at the cursor, and when you hover over, you're gonna get the wave and smile kind of reaction. And this is embedded just with this simple iframe capability that's just built into Rive. So this is actually one of the simplest ways to integrate something into a Webflow website. But then I've got some examples here. This is a site in progress too. So if anybody has questions about anything or like has requests of things to add, I'm always looking for that. I want to keep adding to this site and make it a valuable resource. But there's this sort of thread where what is Rive starts with like this little cup of water. If you want to get started, you kind of dip your toe in. If you're ready to start adding it to your site, maybe you're swimming. And then, as you get down deeper, maybe you're really scuba diving down below there. And then a library, once you get into the final. And then, I had to add a nice big surprise footer at the bottom too.
Nice.
So, there's a lot of resources here, but that's just like a great example of one thing that is possible. Just kind of add some fun to a website. These animations, up here, and even the like waving menu icon are also Rive animations. And then I've got some examples of kind of what can be done here too. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about like what can be done, and then we can look at the sort of how Rive works as in the editor kind of view of things too.
Awesome. Yeah, one of your projects that caught my eye was the music band Octopus.
Oh yeah.
That was really wild. So maybe you could just pull that up really quickly.
One Kraken band.
Is it Kraken? Yeah, the Kraken band.
So this is maybe the most complex Rive animation that I've made. And I'm not sure if the sound will come through on the stream or not. I'll give it a try. And I'll give a little credit. This is part of a project a side project I'm working on with a friend, where we're creating a series of kids' stories and games with cryptid creatures, which are krakens and Bigfoots and
wow, that's awesome.
Stuff like that. So this is one of the early kind of games that we're putting together. But the idea with this is the same thing, has this kind of looping animation, and then as you start to click on the instruments, activate and sync the music.
Your sound's going out, but
I wonder if it's because I'm playing the sound on the.
Yeah. How about this? Just don't try to talk, and just kind of like click around on it, and then once you turn off the sound, then you can come back and talk. We'll see how that works.
That sounds good. Yeah, so I'll activate the instruments. It should play, and then I'll turn them all back off afterwards. Okay. Can you hear it? Okay.
No, it's not coming through. Oh well. One of the things that this makes me think of is like, have you talked with Casey? I can't remember how to say her last name. Countables, Casey. Anyway, I'll put you guys together. But she did the she's done some stuff which is a little bit more experimental. Like there's one, was it like dating with fish or whatever? It's like swipe left, swipe right, and
yes, Tinder, right? Casey Catalbus, I think.
Catalbus, yeah. I was like, I'm butchering her last name. I'm so sorry, Casey. Just I read like a spell over here. But I think like she's been doing some stuff which is similar in type of this experimentation, but then doing that in Webflow. And I would love to see, and she's also, very interested in like, science and how to make things approachable for kids. And Seems like there could be like a good back and forth, and just I think she'd really love this.
Yeah. I know of Casey, and I have not talked with her, but I would love to. So yeah, I will. That's a
Yeah.
good suggestion.
Yeah, I'll tag both of y'all, and maybe we can have a follow-up stream where there's something, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think this is just one example of like how to have things that are more expressive, or even like how to maybe even like if you're a teacher, how to engage a class. So my daughter has she's been checking out Rive, and she's very much into animation. And I was talking with her about the differences between sort of like bitmap animation and vector animation. A lot of this is vector animation. What's the end output? Like, how is this kind of coming out? Like, is it SVGs, or what are you really getting in the end?
Yeah, that's a great question. Rive has its own runtimes and its own file type.
Okay.
And so I don't know actually how exactly it's structured.
Well, that'll be a question I can throw over to Jared, or we can start to look at in more detail. But if they've got their own runtime, then they're obviously doing something with a combination of, CSS and JavaScript, and maybe there's like some WebGL in there. Like, who knows? Like, I'm just like sprinkling, kind of things around.
Yeah.
But cool. Well, yeah, that was just one project, and we'll throw that link. I don't know if you want to just maybe Slack that link to Pablo, and then we can throw it into the chat here so that people can play with it.
Cool. Yes.
And while you're doing that, I'll just kind of give a quick shout out here to Jake. Good to see you. And then looks like Star is back. So good to see you, Star. And yeah, then we'll get back into, here we go. So Pablo, if you want to throw this into the chat. And then, yeah, Jeff, maybe you just kind of keep going back through. So, looking at like how to, I think that was a great example of using like looping animations, and then how to create even just a simple game-like experience.
Yep.
But what else is possible?
Yeah. So on that one, that is, like I said, that's one of my most kind of advanced ones. But and that's because the sound is actually not, you can't do sound in Rive. It's just the animation timeline. So I'm actually syncing the sound with JavaScript. I'm using the Howler.js library to load in all the looping sounds. So I had to figure out a lot to get the sounds to stay synced with each other, and to get the animation synced with the sound, which mostly works. Like I said, I'm still in progress, but just the fact that it's possible, I thought was incredible. I have one other one that is in the same project that also demonstrates. If I can pull it up quickly.
Yeah. Jose, good to see you. And then I'm working on my Spanish. I'm probably, yeah. I'm not going to try to translate that live, but I'm pretty sure I got what you're talking about there. All right. So what other example you have here?
Yeah. Okay, good. So this is another game built in Rive. This one also has sound that you can turn on and off. This was my first attempt to sync the sound, but this one also has a randomized element, and uses JavaScript to update the count up here too. So this is a game where this character, this is our Bigfoot character, he's going to go and some, and then when he shows up, your count goes up. So that's the whole game. It just keeps going, but you can try to get a high score there. So that's another kind of fun one. But each time you hit play, it's gonna put him into a different spot. So last time he was up here. Okay, that's a bug. I was working on it. Yeah, so now he's not there. He's gonna be somewhere else. Oh, there we go. There's 9 different spots he could be hiding in. So it's another kind of one. But so this is all vector animation. It was designed in Figma, and then you can kind of copy and paste into Rive and get it all rigged up and animated, which is super cool. And then one other one I was going to show is I put this one on my portfolio site, which demonstrates what you can do with bitmap images as well. So this was a it's a self-portrait. Like I made in Procreate, but I exported and brought into Rive, and they've got this incredible meshing system and a bones system that allows you to warp bitmap images. And then in this case, I'm syncing it to the cursor movement. So that's just another thing that's fun to do. And then I also did this button up here too, where this little blob kind of reaches out to the cursor as you get closer, and then you get this kind of bouncing animation as you hover over it too. So
seems like a great way to, I mean, outside of kind of like being able to create educational materials or how to be able to maybe like walk someone through a more complicated topic, having micro animations. And what do you see as the difference between Webflow's native animations to Rive, and like how that what does that mean from a workflow standpoint?
That's a great question. I think about that a lot, actually, because sometimes I want to do a simple demonstration of what you can do in Rive. But the simple things that you can do in Rive, you can do with native Webflow animations. And so it's kind of thinking about like, what's the next, where is it get to the point where you do want to work in Rive instead of native animations. One example is buttons. So I've got this one down here, which is an animated button. That could just be a button, right? And you could, you can have a hover state, but you can't have a hover state like this. Which is and then this one too, it also has like a click animation too. So I have it like scale down and then fly away before it takes you to the next page. Again, that's something you can put in a little delay and have that kind of thing set up. But the one kind of tricky thing with that, and I've actually got that one set up as an example with some documentation and stuff, is that you have to set up the states in a certain way to function properly, and then you got to use some JavaScript code. So I've got it set up here, with a simple way you can kind of copy and paste, and I try to make it clear like which parts you need to update and which parts you need to put in there. So it's definitely a more advanced implementation. I think once you do it a couple times, at least for me, like once I did it a couple of times, I realized how to make it work, and then was able to think about all the other possibilities of that too.
I know that for me, and maybe it's just like kind of old dog new tricks type of thing, is I'm more comfortable in timeline animations rather than, I think like the animation style in Webflow is great. It's just different because I can't necessarily scrub it, to be able to get like those little micro animations, and I can preview it. But I think that's one of the things that for me, like, and again, like, I'm not like Felix, who's on our team and it's just like cranking through and doing awesome stuff. So I probably shouldn't be doing anything anymore, but I know that for some people, especially as you're trying to get into, this could be a more approachable way.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe what we can do is jump into Rive now. So I think, people can kind of see, generally here's be able to animate stuff. Like now, what does it start to look like? How do you orient to the canvas? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah, perfect. And I'll pull up in this Rumple one. This was from the homepage of the Riveflow site. There's actually quite a bit going on here, but in some ways it's kind of simple, and I think I'll be able to walk through and show some of the really unique and powerful features of what Rive can do compared to other animation software. And I would say actually the thing Rive gets compared to most frequently is Lottie animation, right? And so Lottie is going to let you do a single timeline. And what's great about Lottie is that it is supported by Webflow natively. You don't have to use the custom code and things like that. And it's going to let you, manipulate the timeline, a single timeline, really easily. What Rive lets you do is combine timelines, set triggers to transition between timelines, all kinds of stuff like that. So I'll try to demo some of that. Because that's some of what makes it really powerful, is that it truly is interactive animation, and interactive in some kind of unexpected ways, I think.
Cool.
I haven't seen anything like what Rive can do. So this is Rumple. Like I said, this is the one from that homepage, and there's two modes in Rive. There's design mode and animate mode. And so when you're designing, you'll get, sort of your file inspector over here. This is going to have all your artwork and everything, as well as some, this has a bones system on it, which I'll just turn that off so we can just kind of see the artwork a little bit better. But that shows, how the character is actually rigged and how it, what makes it animate the way that it does, which is optional. But then this is a character basically I had this set up in Figma, and I copied and pasted it here, and then started adding the bones and creating the animations and things like that. So when I get into animate mode, in your, down in the left corner is kind of where you have your timelines and what they call the state machine, and that's really where all the logic and the magic happens. And that's what we're seeing here. But I'll start with just some of the timelines. So in this one, I have, turn the bones back on for a second here. So I have this main kind of vertical bone in the middle here. And that is, if I play this, it's that's what's causing the just the bouncing, just the vertical up and down kind of bouncing. And then I also have a separate timeline, which is the rocking side to side, which is just kind of looping like that. And then what I can do in the state machine is actually play both of those animations simultaneously. And so I have one here where it's playing the side to side rocking, and on another, these are called layers, the bouncing one is playing here. So when I play this, it's going to do both at the same time, which is really cool. So you can animate those properties separately. And then here I've got one for blinks too, and that's also happening on its own timeline. You can kind of see it playing through. And so the blinks is, it's just a longer loop. I think this one is, I have 4 seconds. So every 4 seconds he does like a little double blink kind of thing. But what's really nice is you can have timelines of varying lengths all looping, on their own time, but all playing simultaneously. Which is really cool. And then the other thing that's you can do is look at these inputs. So these inputs are what drive the logic for Rive interactive animations. And so these are, let's see, this tracking one is a Boolean, so it's a kind of a check yes or no. And then the wave is a trigger. So that one, it just, it fires basically. The other type is a number, and there's a lot you can do with numbers, and you can combine all these. But when I get into the waving, you can kind of see I put 2 different animation timelines into here. And that's just, you just grab a timeline you created and you can drag it in here, and then you can create connections to them and, link them back and forth, all that kind of stuff. Super cool. But then on these transitions, you can choose, what are the conditions to transfer from one timeline to another. So in this one, I have this this wave input is a trigger. So I say it's going to go from face idle, which is just a sort of a neutral kind of face. It's not animated, I don't think. In fact, I think that one I just have, I just have the different parts of the face kind of keyed in place. And then it goes to, I think I have it on wave is where, that's going to open the mouth and pop the eyebrows up. So it's going to go from face idle to wave on this condition when wave is triggered. And then I can have it say, when it goes back to the idle one, it just needs to play 100% of that wave animation, and then it'll transfer back. So actually, if I hit play on this, you can see it happen down in the area down there. So you can see it transfer to the wave, and then when it goes back to face idle. So this is actually really helpful for troubleshooting if you're not sure what's, if something is functioning the way you want it to or not. And then, of course, you can get really complicated with those kind of things as well. And maybe I'll pause for a moment, and then I have a much more complicated one.
Yeah, wow, this is amazing. It almost feels like, if you're watching a musician and they start off with sort of like one drum beat, and then they layer on something else,
Yep.
and they layer on something else, and just being able to have that sort of level of depth. So it's not just setting one kind of static timeline, but you're actually able to sort of nest those timelines and then be able to have kind of a more engaging type of experience, because all of a sudden it's like you've got the up and down movement, you got a little left and right, a blink, a wave, a lot of different things here, which would be really challenging to do in different environments. Got a question here from Jeff. Do you think it'd be, sorry, Jose, Jeff, do you think it'd be possible to create a small animation in Rive using a PNG sequence of frames generated, for example, in Blender?
Yes, that is possible. I would say yes, it's possible.
Okay.
The answer is yes.
It's possible. What I would guess is that part of the power of a platform like this, again, I'm just speaking from my Flash experiences, that it was vector driven. Do you think that's kind of the same here, is that you can do some of that? It's just you start to become more limited in what you can do?
Yeah, I would say it'll increase the file size pretty significantly. Although that said, one of the Rive, I think that team's main objectives is to keep Rive really performant, regardless of what you're doing with it. And so even when you bring in PNGs, or you can work with Photoshop files in Rive as well, it has WebP compression built into it. So it can take a pretty large PSD file and shrink it down pretty significantly, so that at runtime it's going to be as performant as possible. So that would happen with the PNG sequence for sure. Depending on how complicated the Blender animation is too, because this is definitely 2D software. It's not 3D, but you can use the mesh to alter things to give it a 3D like effect. So it's kind of a faux 3D effect, but that can actually get you pretty far in a lot of cases too. So, or maybe use a combination of those two things.
It's wild that you could go in and wire up almost a skeleton like you would in other environments. We did that with letter run. It was really complicated, and but it was cool because like once you did it once, then you could manipulate it in different ways and have it react, and so that's nice that you can do this in a 2D environment and still have that type of control. So a question here: would it be possible to export Rive files as a Lottie file?
The answer is no. And actually, I see pretty active in the Rive Discord channel, and I think that gets asked very frequently. And I think it's because people are so familiar with Lottie, and especially how it works in Webflow. I think from what I understand from the answers that I've seen the Rive team give to that question is that it's a different kind of format, and it would remove any interactivity that you have set up. And so, which is, I can understand why people would like to do that, because in many ways, this is a pretty simple animation tool. Whereas, After Effects, I feel like has a kind of a learning curve. It's a little overwhelming when you first launch it. Rive is pretty simple compared to that. But they just not compatible format, basically.
I mean, again, back to Flash and Swift. I mean, that was the idea there, is that the export was really a byproduct of like how that application was tuned. And so all of those little things, like the way that you're looking at how this works, it was very tightly coupled into, again, kind of like a really optimized and performant output.
Right.
But, at that point it was, it's downsides of proprietary. Fortunately, you don't need a plugin here, so that's really great.
Right.
But in terms of integrating into other kind of frameworks like Lottie, it doesn't necessarily off the shelf do that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Cool. Well, you said you had kind of another example, a little bit more complicated. How are you thinking of that?
Yeah. So that one, if I go to actually, maybe what I first want to show real quick is this idea. There's two ways to add Rive animations to Webflow. One is the easy method, right? Is iframe embed, and so that is that's really great for any interaction that's going to happen inside the canvas area. So that's why the bouncing rumple animation on the homepage is just the iframe embed. The other method, using the JavaScript runtime, that's what really allows you to have your Rive animation interact beyond the canvas. So if you want something to have cursor tracking throughout your whole site, or scroll-based animation, which is the example I'll show next, that's when you need to use the JavaScript runtime, which is a little bit more advanced. But this iframe is super easy. And in fact, if I go back to Rive real quick, all I did here was go to click share link. It gives you some choices for what you're going to create, and then you hit generate link, and sometimes it takes a moment or two, but yeah, here it is. So you literally copy and paste this embed code into an embed block in Webflow, and it works. And that's great too, because it actually previews in the Webflow preview.
Oh yeah.
Even the interactivity works in the preview too. So that's really nice for when you're designing.
Cool.
And then and you can also share a link to it directly, like that. So yeah, really nice kind of built-in sharing options there. But then if you need to do the more advanced one, like a scroll-based animation, which I'll show here. So on this one, this is the canvas is over here on the left side. So as I scroll here, we'll see this is going to turn into a submarine. It's going to dive deeper and deeper and deeper. Halfway through, the lights come on and start searching. As you get all the way down to the bottom, you find treasure. And then if you try to get the treasure, this this octopus is going to reach out and try to get you. But what hopefully you can see, this periscope is searching the whole time. This propeller is searching the whole time. The sub is kind of bobbing the whole time. So those are all going to be separate timelines, and they can happen kind of independently. And then if you scroll back up, it's going to come back up. That'll turn the lights back off and go all the way back up to the top and turn back into this this dive in. So so that is using, oh, I forgot I put this little GIF in here too. So that's using a little a number input that is going to look at the scroll percentage between 0 and 100, and allow you to use the scroll position to determine what is happening here. And I made this example specifically to show the difference between Lottie and Rive in this case, because with Lottie, you definitely can do a scroll animation, and it's super cool. But with Lottie, if you stop scrolling, the animation stops too, right? So in Rive, you can see it's still going. The water is still waving. You could go to any point and stop, and if you have a timeline that's still going, it'll continue playing, which I think is just super cool. And then to be able to trigger, so you could have a Lottie that would get to at 50%. You could turn the lights on the sub, and then continue playing through. But you can't have it just trigger something that will start playing its own loop, like you can here too. So so if I go into the Rive file for this one, you'll see that this is much more complicated than some of the other ones I showed so far. And I'm also using a nested artboards technique here too, which is great because it'll allow you to create an animation on one artboard and then put it into your main artboard, and then be able to control the animation from there. So real quick, I'll just kind of show, I think on the chest one here, I just have a close animation and an open animation. And so it's going to trigger those on the main timeline. And then the water depth, this is one thing that really helps to keep file sizes down, is if you have an animation you're going to reuse, you can create a nested artboard, place it in, use it over and over again, and even have it look different ways. But this one is oh yeah let me see if I can actually show. Yeah, so I've got the waving motion, and apologies, it's transparent because of the way I use it in the main artboard. But that's it has a transparency to it, I should say. So that's the waving is its own thing, and then the rising water, it just goes from the bottom all the way to the top. but that's how I'm using. I have 10 of those embedded in my main artboard. And so that's what makes it look like the water is getting deeper and darker as you scroll down, is that each of those is playing through. But also that's what makes it, when you stop scrolling, the water keeps moving wherever it is. So that was definitely a fun technique to figure out. And then here, okay, let me see if I can show. Yeah, these are all the timelines that I have set up for this one. Actually, it's not all of them, because some of these are in folders. So, you can get really complicated with it for sure. Yeah, these are all the like water rising animations I have. Maybe I'll show that part first. So what I have is an up animation and a down animation for each one. And this is just saying how far into the nested artboard timeline should I go with this one. So at down, it's at 0, and at up, yeah, it should be at 100%. So if I quickly, yeah, 100%. And then, so I have one of those for each of those timelines. And then in my state machine, which I also have a lot of layers in, I'm using this thing called a blend state, which lets you choose. Tell me if I'm going way too deep on this.
Sorry. No, this is awesome.
Okay.
It's wild, like it's wild just how some of the nomenclature in the UI has changed, but this is the exact same thing as embedding what was called movie clips in Flash.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
And then you could have those timelines working independently. You could target those movie clips. But what's cool is I just love the idea of a state machine and being able to like, it's visualizing in some ways like how those are individually working. So it's not just such a mystery, because I've had so many scenarios where I was trying to debug something and it was, embedded 3 levels deep into, another timeline. And but it was just cool to see how you're starting to layer those together and create some interesting animations.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question in terms of accessibility. Is there a way to turn off Rive animations, or is there if you had an iframe in there, could you pass a variable to say like just static?
That's a great question. I don't know that you could do it with the iframe embed, but if you were using the JavaScript runtime, you could.
Okay. It might just be something to look at. And I know there is a way. So something we've been looking at is like how to interact with iframe elements through the use of local storage. So it's kind of like coming up to local storage and then going back down into the iframe. And that's even something that as we've been digging into DevLink, which by the way, I'm hoping to have a conversation with Ben Parker from Webflow on DevLink towards the end of the month. So we'll see. We'll see how things are coming with a more public release there, but hoping to get access to there and just see how that all works and that type of thing. But just curious. Like it might be something that we can look at, or I can talk with Jared or maybe Whit on.
That would be awesome.
Love to see if any questions. Looks like we've got a really good audience in here. We've had some great questions so far. Anything specific? Not just trying to go down, Flash memory lane here. You can tell the world that I came from before Webflow. It's interesting. There's actually quite a few people that I've met that have come from that world as a background that were early adopters, and I think for that same reason, it wasn't for trying to do like anything super interactive, but just to kind of close that gap between idea and execution. Well, cool. How about this? Let's do one more demo of something you think could be pretty cool, and then we'll take any last questions here.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. I think maybe just the last thing on this one that I would show is how this nested one works. Is it's the number is driving the animation on this. So you can kind of see it scrubs through here, but each of these little colored spikes is basically I'm defining which point within range, it should trigger certain animations or transition through certain animations. So as I scrub through the scroll percentage number, it's going to scroll through those animations and help set those up. So these inputs can really be powerful in terms of kind of driving what the animation does. And yeah, if you're using the JavaScript runtime, you can set it anything to manipulate the number input or the booleans or the triggers. So it almost feels like anything is possible, which is great. You just have to figure out how to wire it up with code. But in terms of getting it set up in Rive to function that way, that works really well.
Well, over the weekend we announced Slater, so the Slater app that we're working on, which really does try to create at least a canvas for the meeting of those worlds, where we can say like, hey, no code is great, love no code, love Webflow, a little bit of sprinkles of code on there can go a long way. And maybe what we can do is get you in to that preview link, so get you into the product. And I'd love to just see the kind of the back and forth between Rive, JavaScript, and Webflow. So we've got a question here, and I'll throw it up on the board. So the JavaScript runtime allows you to export the interactions. Am I assuming this correctly?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think what you do with to use the JavaScript runtime is you download this file. It's a .riv file, and then you can host it wherever you'd like. I think so in the code here, you can see I'm using ucare to host this file. And then within the code itself is where I'm referencing, the name of the state machine, the name of my artboard, make sure the autoplay is set. And then this is actually the calculation that sets uses the scroll percentage to drive that number input. So the interaction is all kind of baked into the Rive file itself, that .riv file. But you can use the JavaScript code to drive those inputs within the file. So you need to know what they're called, or there's actually several ways to reference them. And that's one of the next things I'd like to add to this site, is just trying to make it clear how to call those different parameters and update them with your code.
That's awesome. And a follow-up question here, or how do you hook that with the JavaScript code? And so it sounds like you can host that externally, you can host it potentially within Rive. Cool. And
I've been working with Code Sandbox too, especially like just with experimenting to get it to see if I'm setting my code up properly and make sure it works. And then I end up sometimes I put it right into Webflow, and sometimes I put it on GitHub, something like that.
So what you can do with Slater is, so we give you that environment where you can go in and have a working environment, put that in there, and then you have the ability to either push to production or push to kind of a staging environment. And then based upon where you are within Webflow, so if you're in production or in staging, it'll automatically switch between and show that. And then it will save the 5 different clicks that it takes to be able to add that code, come back in, publish, see if it works, that whole thing. So it's like you can add just a snippet from Slater into your Webflow project, and then publish that once, and then you can just save, and it'll be able to see that live update directly within your project. So I'll get you access, give you a little bit of a demo, and just love to maybe have you back on, or we could do a little snippet of just hey, here's how to use Slater within Slater, Rive plus Webflow, which I think is a really kind of interesting combination there.
Yeah, I would love to do that. That does feel like the most cumbersome part of the process is how do I get the code into what I want it. So that sounds like it would solve the biggest.
Oh man, just after last year of doing trying to sort of bring these worlds together, we're I'm just amazed that the team made it through because it's so difficult. Right now, these worlds are so far apart, and they shouldn't be. And it's there's no, as I've said somewhere else, but there's no special place in heaven for not using code. you know. And in fact, there's like definitely a deep part of hell for just trying to do everything without code. Like if you've tried to just like, you'll see these beautiful kind of flow charts of stuff, and it's just like feels like a Rube Goldberg machine, where it's like, hey, all I was trying to do is turn on the light, and then I've got to, you know, and then it's like turn on the light. So
yeah, and then you can't remember how to do it next time.
you can't remember. There's no documentation.
Yep.
And the other, I mean, like, again, just things have been happening so quickly, but the other really cool thing that we've been doing is like having one AI write code for us, but then also explain code for us. So if you had something in there, let's say you dropped it in from Rive and you just didn't remember what it did, we have the feature where you can go explain this to me, and then it'll be like, oh, exactly that walkthrough that you just did. We're seeing really good success there. So I'll get you in, and again, just try to get your feedback.
Yeah, that's great. I've used some of my code I've gotten from Chat GPT because, like I said, I don't write JavaScript necessarily, but I can read it enough to figure out like, oh yeah, that's the thing I need to change. But yeah, creating it from scratch, or even sometimes understanding what it does is it's its own language for sure.
It's like I think if you can understand, and that's what we were talking about with like this transition from no code to knowing code, is that if you can understand just some of the basics, like, all right, setting up variables, what's an array, you know, how does a method work, you know, some of those fundamentals, then all of a sudden you're going to be able to have a better understanding of like how to approach prompting. And, you know, the same thing for, you know, it's like Webflow. Like once you understand a little bit of CSS, and what they're doing there is kind of surfacing that and trying not to compromise the intent or the the integrity of that. But you know, once you understand that, then you really have so much more power. So, and then this is, hey Mason, what tool are you talking about? Is this an internal tool? Well, it has been an internal. Also, Jeff, I don't know if you can help me with pronunciation here. And for Infi Grant, again, I'm like really struggle with spelling and reading. So I will throw this out here. And I'll throw this into the chat here. So this is the app that we announced over the weekend. So it has been an internal tool. This is our manifesto. So this is just starting with kind of what we believe. And I think that's the best way to talk about products is, you know, a bit of the why and who the team is and what's the challenge that they're trying to solve. And so for us, you know, we think there's a huge opportunity here in bringing together, you know, these different worlds, and that as, you know, no code developers, we don't have to go it alone. Like there's a lot of people out there that are really, really great at writing lots of code. And if we can just give them, like, again, thinking back to my days in Flash, you know, you would have a visual developer. At that time, I was just like a Flash developer and doing timeline stuff. And then you would have someone that was working in Eclipse, if anyone remembers that. So it was a code-only IDE. And then it would compile a Swift that it basically just brought it all together. But within that, like you would just reference the IDs of different animations. And so the same thing with Webflow is, you know, you can go in and just basically, Jeff, you could hand over to a developer a set of attributes, right? And then the JavaScript developer can just go in and reference those attributes. And there's again, that kind of meeting place.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome.
But yeah, anyway, I'm not trying to have this just to be about kind of like a Slater preview, but yeah, I'm excited about it. And yeah, I can give a bit more of a demo, later on. And Jeff, I'll get you in there, and just love to have Jared give you kind of a quick overview, get you into the Slack channel.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Sounds like it would really improve the workflow of getting stuff published. So.
Yeah, it's made a huge impact on us, and then we've got some stuff in there where, you know, code sharing, stuff along those lines, kind of like write it once, share it with the team.
Nice.
So, yeah, awesome. Well, this has been great. Any other kind of last questions? Let's see. While I'm asking that, maybe if anyone's putting some stuff together. So Jeff, what's next for you? I mean, obviously you're working within kind of the nonprofit space. What are you curious about? What are you wanting to work on?
Yeah, I've I've been doing some Rive animation freelancing for sure
Oh,
as well. And then the One Kraken band and the Find Archie projects are part of an upcoming project. So
hmm,
there will be more Webflow development, Rive animation with that. So that's a coming soon project as well. So I will definitely be tweeting about that like crazy when it comes out. But yeah, that's another area where it's trying to do something that's really fun that kids are going to enjoy. Been doing a lot of user testing with
yeah.
4 6 year olds and stuff, and then but also hoping like adults will enjoy it too, because they'll just be like, wait, what, how does this work? I've never seen anything like this. So trying to appeal to both kids and adults with that one.
Hmm.
And that's a big project, so that's my big one
That's
right
awesome. Well, I've got to introduce you to Casey because she's been working on all sorts of education materials, and yeah, I think you guys could trade some good notes.
now. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Cool. Well, great. Well, Jeff, thanks for coming and hanging out. It was awesome to just, use this as an excuse to see what you've been working on and
Yeah,
get a bit more of a sense of, just like who you are, like, your background.
yeah,
And yeah, I'm really looking forward to, again, seeing more things you're building. It's opened up a lot of ideas for me and even the team.
good.
So yeah, please keep sharing, and we'll talk with you soon. Get you back on. Get you kind of into Slater.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds so great. Thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, I'll just say to anyone tuning in too, I'm continuously learning about this and trying to make it uh, easy to understand, because I know it's pretty complex. But if you ever have questions, I respond a lot to Twitter messages and DMs and things like that. So I unintentionally made it my personal mission to make sure Webflow users can understand how to use Rive, because it's so powerful. So yeah, if you ever get stuck on anything, feel free to reach out. Be happy to talk about Rive anytime.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Jeff, thank you. Thank you for everyone that tuned in. Really great questions. Appreciate the conversation, and we'll talk soon. I'll see everyone else on Twitter.